Germany has announced further action on sending migrants back to Poland, with a complete lack of action on our part. In addition to the enlargement of the migrant center on the border with Poland, the presence of German police on our territory is causing more and more discussion. Where is the Polish state? Asks the opposition. This is the S8 highway near Warsaw and a line of German police cars. And these are the photos that one of the internet users recorded in Gubin in the Lubuskie region. German police running away from Poles. In other words, what are German officers doing in Poland? That's the question we asked the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Administration once again, because already last summer, the public was shocked when a German police car simply left an Afghan family in Osinowo Dolne in Poland. Recently, we also saw a situation from Gubin. A video was taken in the middle of the night, where a German police car was moving through the streets of the city. This fills us with slight unease, especially having in mind the events of last June. It's an incident, explained the Interior Ministry at the time. Now, however, after another series of news about visits to Poland by police from across the western border, it is clear to the naked eye that German services feel like home in our country. Of course, during the government of the United Right, there was cross-border cooperation between the German federal and state police and the Polish police and border guards. But unfortunately, after the change of power, the Germans feel more and more bold on Polish territory. They also cross the Polish border in uniform and in police cars. We have not received a response from the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Administration, and these are more photos from Lubieżin in western Pomerania, where a German police car and policemen are on the Polish side. Here, German services hand over migrants to our officers from Ukraine and a Pole who has lost the right to stay on their territory, the border guard confirmed to us. A patrol from the joint Polish-German outpost in Pomelin arrived at the site to carry out activities by officers of the German Federal Police as part of the temporary reintroduction of border control, which the German side has been conducting since October 2023. The joint outposts were established on the basis of an agreement between Poland and Germany, signed while the government of Ewa Kopacz was still in office. After an 8-year hiatus, another one was recently established in Tuplice in the Lubuskie region. However, it's hard to get rid of the impression that this cooperation simply makes it easier to hand over migrants to the German police. When we asked a representative of the government about this, he replied, "I don't know where you derive such a thesis from, and I won't refer to it because it's not very reasonable, I think." Interestingly, the posts in Świecko and in Tuplice are only a few dozen kilometers from this place, Eisenhutenstadt. This is a German town where a migrant center is already in operation, and a decision has just been made to expand it. I came 9 months ago from Syria to Bulgaria by car, and from Bulgaria to Berlin by plane. I came because I want to work. In my country, there is no such opportunity. I don't want to leave. And importantly, Germany is straightforward about its intentions. It is enlarging because it wants to transfer more migrants to Poland, as evidenced by an official announcement from the German Interior Ministry. Given Brandenburg's good relations with neighboring provinces in Poland, the center will be run with an emphasis on returns. However, the migrants who are being sent back are not necessarily getting into Germany from Poland. And while the crisis is visible to the naked eye, decisions and announcements are official, and public emotions are clear, the civic platform politicians downplay the issue. There is really no such concern here that we will have to face forced relocation in Poland. This is clear and was confirmed by the head of the European Commission. Let's take into account that in 5 days there are elections in Germany, and this affects the dynamics of the discussion. This is capitulation. No other words can be used for the lack of a clear strategy of the Polish side against German actions. Germany has an excess of migrants on its territory. These are people who threaten social security in Germany. There are many incidents of all kinds, from minor criminal incidents to terrorist attacks, and Germany is seeing its failed migration policy, which it has pursued since Angela Merkel, and they want to reverse it. Unfortunately, it seems to me that it is at the expense of Poland. It is worth adding that the stepped-up measures that the Germans are taking to send migrants back to Poland are taking place a year before the migration pact. That is, the rule, accept, or pay.
Echoes of embattled democracy have reached overseas. The American conservative think tank, the Hudson Institute, has prepared a special report on Poland under the title, When Democrats Rule Undemocratically, The Case of Poland. It is a thorough analysis of the rule of Donald Tusk, whose action has been described as overstepping the mark. What do Americans think about the condition of Polish democracy? And what consequences will this have in the future? Democracy and the rule of law. These are beautiful slogans that do not come off the lips of Donald Tusk. Worse with their implementation, as described in a report by the American think tank, the Hudson Institute, which does not leave a dry thread on the Polish government. Since taking office in December 2023, the Civic Coalition government has embarked upon a campaign of lawfare and criminalisation of political differences, the goal of which is to ensure law and justice never again represents a serious challenge to its power. The Civic Coalition has crossed the line with its iron broom approach to addressing these issues. Americans' knowledge of the situation on the Vistula is extensive. Their attention has not escaped German journalist Klaus Bachmann, who heralded the notorious violations of the rule of law before Donald Tusk took office.
Some people were talking about restoring the constitutional order by means that might not be democratic. Okay, all right.
One of the cornerstones of the rule of law is a prosecutor's office that is also ready to investigate the alleged crimes of the power camp. The report details a process of illegally taking control of the National Prosecutor's Office. The government dismissed Dariusz Barski from his position as a national prosecutor, declaring that he had not been legally appointed. He was appointed in 2022. Barski was physically barred from entering the office and was replaced by Dariusz Koneluk, a prosecutor loyal to the government who could be relied upon to coordinate criminal prosecutions against former law and justice officials. It is very convenient to build politics on the division between good and bad. Well, because if there are the bad ones on the other side, then power can do anything. And this is exactly how Americans understand Donald Tusk's fighting democracy.
Donald Tusk campaigned on the premise that our opponents are authoritarians and we need to use perhaps illegal means to disassemble an authoritarian state, much like, as Matt said, post-communist Yugoslavia or post-Nazi Germany. When that is your premise, nothing stands in your way. You can do anything you want.
And Donald Tusk's government is trying to fight the opposition as a maybe. This is the first time since 1989 that political prisoners have appeared in Poland. The most spectacular case was the police entering the presidential palace in January 2024 to arrest MPs Mariusz Kamiński and Maciej Wąsik for alleged abuse of power when they headed the Central Anti-Corruption Bureau in 2007. The case was mooted after President Duda pardoned them again. In addition, the Americans looked into the case of Father Michael Olszewski and two female officials who were treated inhumanely by the government services. The government even detained a Warsaw priest, Father Michał Olszewski, on corruption charges related to a charitable venture and held him in pre-trial detention for nearly 7 months before recently releasing him. These cases may or may not have merit, but the methods are similar and involve guilt before it is proven. Conservatives overseas remind us that Donald Tusk's actions are a double-edged sword, because after all, he too will one day lose power.
The politics of vendetta must end, because eventually this current government will collapse and there will be a new government, and it could look very different than the current composition. And what you don't want is to have your political opponents using the same weapons.
The outlawing of the opposition can take many forms. It doesn't have to be a single decree by the Prime Minister, but indirect action. An example of this is the unlawful deprivation of law and justice's electoral subsidy. Law and Justice may lose millions of zloty of state funds to which it was entitled because it allegedly misused public money during the 2023 election campaign, as well as about 10 million zloty a year until 2027, very much like the attempt to deprive Law and Justice of funds so that it could not fairly compete, let alone win, the 2025 presidential election. Let's recall, the Supreme Court ruled that Law and Justice should receive the election subsidies. With this decision, after the time, the State Election Commission agreed, but the government all along has not paid any money.
Calls for law and justice to be delegalized, and then using and comparing it to even like post-Yugoslavia, and then trying to deny law and justice funds to conduct its electoral campaign.
The authorities illegally claim the right to decide who is judge and who is not. Inconvenient judgments are simply ignored.
The current government can and should absolutely use all legal means to modify the current system of reform.
American conservatives are constantly monitoring the situation in Poland. The period of Donald Trump's presidency promises to be fraught with activity in Europe. The speech in Munich by US Vice President J.D. Vance is a symbol of this.
You cannot win a democratic mandate by censoring your opponents or putting them in jail.
The US think tank's report coincides with the notice of possible coup crime filed by Constitutional Court Chairman Bogdan Święczkowski. Both documents agree Prime Minister Tusk has crossed the line.
Oczywiście to nie jest zamach stanu.
Of course, this is not a coup d'etat involving bringing tanks, the army, or the police onto the streets. Then this charge would sound as the action of an organised armed criminal group. This is, ladies and gentlemen, a creeping political coup. The conservative wind of change initiated by Donald Trump is blowing across the world. In just a few days, elections in Germany that could end the rule of socialist Olaf Scholz. In May, presidential elections in Poland. Poles will face the chance to express their opposition to permanent lawlessness. We have the most expensive mortgage loans in Europe and still very expensive real estate. Now the government is presenting the First Keys programme, but this only fills the pockets of developers, and the 0% credit was not there and is still not there. Why? Today I took a closer look at the situation. The government pompously announced the programme, but there is as yet no finished bill. First Keys is supposed to help people buy their first apartment on the secondary market or to build a house. However, the programme has quite a few loopholes, which may make it unaffordable or simply unprofitable for many people. That the situation on the Polish real estate market is difficult, everyone knows. Loans for the purchase of an apartment in Poland are the most expensive in the entire European Union. Poland has no program, no housing policy. There is no such policy. We have the most expensive loans in the European Union and very expensive housing, very expensive developer margins and very expensive rent. Housing is unaffordable. Young people have no chance to own their own apartment. They live on rent, on which they spend most of their earnings, and this is frightening, because people will not start a family in such circumstances. This last information shocked even Development Minister Krzysztof Paszyk. Families don't have anything to dream of having a child, children without their own home, and this talk really surprised me. That's why, he explains, the First Keys programme was created in the privacy of ministry offices. Success was trumpeted before the law was prepared, and before all coalition partners had agreed to the proposals. Subsidising expensive loans is just inflating already speculatively inflated housing prices and filling the pockets of developers. I, for one, was against subsidies for these loans. 30% of young people are no longer likely to move away from their parents at all, and 1/3 live with their parents until they are 40. And that's how it may remain, because the conditions that the minister presented have little in common with the realities of the real estate market prices. The limit per square metre of an apartment would be 10,000 zloty. In larger cities, 11,000 zloty. This programme derives from the good, proven programme Housing for the Young, hence the limits, so that the programme will not contribute to price increases. However, the prices of apartments, and not only in the largest Polish cities, have long exceeded 10,000 zloty per square metre. In Warsaw and Krakow, you won't find a neighbourhood where the average rate per square metre would be lower than the government limit, nor do residents of Wrocław, Poznan or Gdansk, among others, stand a chance. And what are young people supposed to buy an apartment for? Will the loan instalments drop from nearly 8%, according to the hype of the election campaign, to 0%? I'm not going back to old formulations. I'm talking about financial support in repaying loan instalments, which are extremely expensive in Poland. Credit, therefore, hardly available, will remain. Interest rates, which make up the cost of real estate loans, the highest in Europe, as everyone knows, will remain high as a result of the government's decision. We will all be making exorbitant payments in the form of not only increased energy prices, but inflation, which, to make matters worse, affects interest rates. Normally, we were hoping that if the shields were lifted at once, or at least kept in place for a longer period of time, we could have had a drop in energy prices and inflation from January, and that would have allowed us to get on the path of lowering interest rates. But that didn't happen. The shields were lifted and the price of energy was frozen until the presidential election. After that, it could become even more expensive.
Vigils, hope, and prayer in front of the window of Rome's Gemelli Clinic, right next to the statue of John Paul II. People are gathering for the fifth night. They want to be as close as possible to Pope Francis during this difficult time for him. I'm only 18, so I haven't seen many popes in my life. I feel emotionally connected to Pope Francis, and I worry about him. I would like him to come out of this. The Vatican's latest announcements are reassuring to the faithful. The Pope slept peacefully the night before, even getting out of bed. But the situation is serious. The Holy Father has bilateral pneumonia, in addition to bronchitis. Doctors make no secret of the fact that this is a huge burden for the 88-year-old patient. All the more so because he had the upper lobe of his right lung removed at a young age.
Nightmare scenarios that doctors had feared after he was hospitalized last week. He is also battling asthmatic bronchitis that requires a cortisone antibiotic treatment, and the Vatican says that is complicating the therapeutic recovery.
The Pope has had a number of examinations, is taking medication, and is resting. He is breathing on his own, and his heart is in good condition. Humor, despite the difficulties, is also good for him. If his heart is working well, there should be no immediate threat to the Pope's life. But we know that he has a number of other health problems that worry the doctors attending to him. The Holy See has canceled all papal activities. Pope Francis is receiving only his closest associates who deliver documents to him. The Pope has appointed deputies to take over some of his duties during his illness. The teaching of the Church also continues when the Pope needs to take care of his health. A press conference by doctors is expected in the coming days to talk about the Pope's condition, treatment, and prognosis. I believe God will get him through this. A lot of good things are already happening. People are coming together in churches and hoping that Francis will continue to serve the world as Pope. The faithful around the world are praying for his speedy recovery. These messages are reaching the Pope, along with get well cards from children.